In the early 90s, Christopher Williams' vocal talent secured him multiple hits. He wrote songs from the heart and delivered them with a power and passion that couldn't be denied. But he was more than a pretty voice. People, or women rather, also gravitated to his pretty face. Sadly, just as quickly as his career rose, it crashed and burned as a result of his own poor choices. Christopher Lawrence Williams, born August 22, 1967, spent his early years in the Edenwald projects in the Bronx, New York, along with his brother. His white father was never a part of his life. In fact, he'd never even met the man. His mother wasn't the greatest parent either, since she was wrestling with her own demons, including a drug addiction and being in and out of jail. Christopher would ultimately find some respite with his aunt and uncle when he was placed in their care at the age of 4. They lived in a nicer area of the Bronx, where he would be exposed to a better environment, or so it was assumed. He actually still found himself going down a bad path. By the time he reached his teens, Christopher and his friends had turned to hustling, dealing drugs, and experiencing the consequences of street life. Christopher got the ultimate wake-up call, though, when his best friend was murdered. He never did anything in the streets again after that. By that time, he had another goal in mind, inspired in part by one very musical aunt by the name of Ella Fitzgerald. Christopher honed his own musical gifts at Harlem's High School of Musical Art. After graduating, he enrolled in Purchase College, now known as State University of New York, but dropped out after his girlfriend became pregnant with his first child, Christopher Jr. Even at the tender age of 18, Christopher knew he had to man up and do what he had to do to support his family. Enter Michael Rosenblatt, an A&R guy whose father was an executive at Geffen Records. While Michael did show interest, especially after Christopher described his voice to be akin to Teddy Pendergrass, Michael needed proof. So he gave Christopher his card and told him to put a demo together ASAP. Christopher got it done, and it ultimately landed him a deal with Geffen. Since the label was based in Los Angeles, Christopher packed up and headed to the West Coast. As soon as he got there, he went on the hunt for a manager. Well, one in particular. Cassandra Mills was leaving a meeting one day when Christopher popped up on her, introduced himself, told her he had a record deal, and that he wanted her to be his manager. After making him sing on the spot, she agreed to the partnership. His debut single, Talk to Myself, off his 1989 debut album, Adventures in Paradise, became an instant R&B hit, making it to number 4. It's worth mentioning, though, that the positive reception the new Jack Swing record received can also be attributed to its sounding very similar to Bobby Brown's number 1 hit, My Prerogative, which dropped the year before. Christopher's star continued to rise with the release of his next single, a powerhouse ballad he co-wrote called Promises, Promises. It became his second top 10 R&B hit, climbing to number 7. And according to him, the lyrics of the track reflected one relationship in particular, his romance with up-and-coming actress Stacey Dash. But by that time, there was no shortage of opportunities for Christopher to spread his love around. He admits that he really didn't have any interest in having a one-on-one relationship with any woman because one wasn't enough. His carefree lifestyle nearly caught up with him in 1989 when he was involved in an incident at a hotel with friend and lookalike Al B. Sure. The way Al tells it, as he was in his room being intimate with a woman, he got up to go to the bathroom to take a shower. At that moment, Christopher, in the adjoining room, came into Al's room to try and convince the woman that he was Al, seemingly in an attempt to have his way with her. According to Christopher, though, that wasn't the case. All he was trying to do was use the facilities. In the end, Al was arrested on rape charges, which were eventually dropped, while Christopher's name never even ended up in a news report, thanks to Cassandra pulling some strings. By the turn of the 90s, Christopher had established himself as a bona fide R&B star, but he was still on the lookout for something more. Enter New Jack City. Cassandra got her hands on the movie script, and after reading it, she knew that she had to get Christopher in. He ended up with a small but memorable part in one of the most iconic films of the decade. He also delivered with a song for the soundtrack called I'm Dreamin'. It soared all the way to number 1 on the R&B chart, becoming the biggest hit of his career. But as well as things were going for Christopher professionally, the same couldn't be said for his personal life. His relationship with Stacey had turned ugly and needed to end. But before that happened, she'd give birth to Christopher's second son, Austin. Christopher didn't take much time to be alone, though, before he found himself in another high-profile relationship, this time with actress Halle Berry. Around this time, he lost his deal with Geffen when the company was sold to MCA, but coming off a #1 hit, he was in the driver's seat. A bidding war ensued, with Uptown Records coming out the winner. Now it was back to the studio. In 1992, his second album, titled Changes, dropped. The lead single, All I See, was co-written by Christopher and spoke to the turmoil he was going through with Stacey over custody of their son. The song made it into the top 20 on the R&B chart. The second single, Every Little Thing You Do, would do even better, capturing the #7 spot on the R&B chart, becoming his fourth top 10 hit. In 1993, Christopher welcomed his third child from as many women, a daughter named Sierra, with Heather Barnes. Also that same year, the label got a call from MTV Unplugged, wanting to film an episode with Christopher. However, when his performance aired on the network, his epic rendition of the 1979 Teddy Pendergrass hit, Come Go With Me, was left on the cutting room floor. Apparently, the reason for that was since he was a new artist to the MTV format, they believed it would make more sense to play his own hit, Every Little Thing You Do, instead. Christopher, though, believed that his label had something to do with the decision and wanted everyone to know just how angry he was about it. So he made his way over to Uptown's office and, well...
Most record labels have a glass and a buzz where you can't even get past a certain thing. I took the couch at the elevator and dismissed the glass. So it's like, you don't have to buzz me in. I'm in.
He came immediately to my office to destroy it, and then he went to Andre and destroyed the...
Andre, again, is not there, and I was in a rage. And so I smashed all the gold and platinum records, tore them up, tore up the machines, ripped the wallpaper off, kicked doors in.
He just didn't act like himself, and that was gonna be a problem. You can't come in the office and just lose it.
Afterwards, I would hear murmurs of people saying, yeah, I wish I was there and all that, and I was like, yeah, okay. Nah, you glad I wasn't there. You know that.
You have no right to do what you did. You know, no right. You have to work things out.
I'm super duper frustrated, and I'm not gonna continue to voice it. I'm mad, and I'm done. Like, I'm done with Uptown.
Even after his destruction of their property, founder and president of Uptown, Andre Harrell, was still willing to put it all behind them and continue their working relationship. But Christopher was truly done. After leaving Uptown, he got a deal to record on Giant Records. The deal couldn't have been more perfect, with it being the biggest of his career, as well as having Cassandra on payroll there as president of Urban Music. Christopher's third album, Not a Perfect Man, was released on Giant in 1995. When it failed to produce any hit singles, his contract with the label wasn't renewed. His losing streak continued when, also around this time and several years after his relationship with Halle had ended, she revealed in an interview that an abusive ex-boyfriend had beaten her so badly that her left eardrum was punctured, causing her to lose 80% of her hearing in that ear. Many people assumed that Christopher was the unnamed ex-boyfriend. To defend himself, he publicly called out Wesley Snipes as her likely assailant. Little did Christopher realize his violent outburst at Uptown would essentially serve as the catalyst to him getting blackballed by the industry. By the late 90s, he retreated to Virginia, where his adoptive parents lived. The environment would also be the place where he rediscovered his Christian faith. Over the coming years, he also dove into his passion for acting, doing minor roles and cameos on the big and small screen, as well as starring or co-starring in several successful off-Broadway theater productions. After a 6-year hiatus from recording music, he returned to the scene with Real Men Do in 2001. In 2014, he collaborated with 4 other vocal artists, Wes Morgan, Melvin Williams, Sean McLemore, and Doug Williams, to form the supergroup 5 Men, and released a gospel album titled Champions. In 2017, Christopher had quite an odd and embarrassing experience at a department store. A source told TMZ that on September 30th, he walked into a Kohl's in McDonough, Georgia, with a tote bag and wearing a baseball cap. He then went to the back of the store and grabbed a pair of JBL headphones, priced at $99.99. Apparently, he threw the headphones into his bag and tried walking out. When security stopped him, Christopher said he simply forgot he bagged them. Then the cops were called. He was arrested and booked for petty theft, a misdemeanor. A couple of hours later, he was released. In November 2021, the Grio reported that Christopher's representative had debunked the rumor that he was in a coma. Concern for Christopher's well-being was sparked after Al B. Sure made an Instagram post saying that he received a call that his friend was ill and in the hospital. 1 year later, Christopher went public and admitted that he had, in fact, been struggling with major health issues related to kidney failure and was in a coma. He openly talked about his illness, causing him to drastically lose weight, have difficulty picking up a fork to feed himself, as well as being told by doctors that he may never walk again. In the summer of 2024, rapper and former Ghetto Boys member Willie D posted an in-depth interview he did with Christopher on his YouTube channel. They talked about everything, including his past health issues, Halle Berry, Jaguar Wright, and Diddy. He also touched on another topic that many people may not have ever heard anything about: his marriage. Yes, Christopher married Natalie Macklin in 1995. According to him, they are still legally married but separated, and he calls her his best friend. Currently, Christopher Williams continues to stay booked and busy, performing on stage as both a singer and actor, looking and sounding better than ever.